Howdy neighbors, welcome to another video. Right now I wanted to celebrate the changing of this year for all of the help that you have given us and the support that you have given this channel. One of the best ways that we could have done this is to give you an advent calendar for 2024 for cool and interesting premium decks that are a little bit outside of the norm with hopefully some tiny tiny amount of competitive viability. All you have to do is try it out for yourself and see if you like it. So what's Advent actually? So it has a whole lot of historical meaning behind it, so I'll leave you guys at home to Google it up. It's really cute and cool, but currently in the modern era, we kind of use it as a way to give ourselves little treats to reward ourselves for being a little bit good throughout the year. And this is going to be my little treat to you guys at home. So right now we do happen to have a premium deck profile for a deck that is near and dear to my heart. It's one of the first Shadow Paladin decks that I've ever been introduced to, and having it have a little bit of an update and life in the Overdress format, and the History Collection has given it a little bit of life as well. Here we have Claret Sword. So being one of the OG stride bearers for Shadow Paladin at the beginning of the G era, Claret Sword lent it power by calling out grade 1s out to the deck, giving them a tiny bit of power and using his GB2 skill to offer up all of the rear guards to get a bunch of strong amounts of boost and also potentially critting out your opponent as well. We kind of want to use that spirit of that archetype within this deck as well, and we have a cool ways of being able to facilitate this. So we'll go down the deck list as quickly as we can, and we'll break down some of the important key pieces of the cards you guys probably have noticed. So first things first, we are playing 4 copies of Supremacy Dragon Claret Sword Dragon. So he has a counterblast 1 of searching your deck when he's been strayed upon, calling a grade 1 out of your deck, and he gets plus 2k until end of turn. Has the additional skill that if you can't stride or you think, meh, I could probably try finishing the game off just on him by himself, you can offer up a couple of rear guards and it gets plus 10k power and a critical as well. You don't usually use this effect that often, but sometimes you can have some awkward game states that you can't utilize your strides, and it's a good way of being able to pressure your opponent hand just ever so slightly. You don't usually stay on this card, but it's not a bad card to stride on when you have to. Then we have 2 copies of Origin Mage Idona. It being able to lend its strength whenever you're on grade 1, being able to search through your deck for your grade 2s and your grade 3s can be pretty important because we do run a very low amount of grade 2s in our deck. We do have some decent grade 3 amounts, especially with Idona himself, but there's a caveat to it. It does count itself as a grade 1, because so sadly enough, you cannot chain Idona into Idona. Can't do that, but it does have the extra added skill of on the rearguard circle counterblast 1 or Vanguard circle counterblast 1, offer up 2 of your other rear guards and draw 2 cards in exchange. It does get a bit of a power bonus on the Vanguard circle, but that's not really that important. Then we do happen to run 3 copies of Claret Sword Dragon himself, and you kind of wondering, hey, you can't use the same name cards in your archetype. Well, here's the caveat. The original Claret Sword Supremacy Dragon, it's just called Supremacy Dragon in its name, and the V version of Claret Sword from EBT 12 has just Claret Sword in its name. So you can run both of them in your deck. It doesn't really conflict, and a lot of your Claret Sword Dragon named cards still work with them because they're technically the same card. It's really cool with retconning and naming, right? Then we do run for grade 2s 1 copy of Damp Hood Dragon. It's a 5k unit, kind of weird, but you can Soul Blast 1 to search yourself a Blast of Dark out of your deck. Then we do also run 1 copy of Blast of Dark, the Royal Paladin / version. You can also run the other V version as well. You almost always want to run the V version, being able to discard a card, a quick shield or guardian ticket or whatever have you from out your hand to be able to get a drive check is just very good in this archetype. Being able to get your ritual up, get cards in your drop zone can be pretty nice for this deck. Then we have 4 copies of Mage of Framed Blades Cruciate, which does give you the chance of being able to counterblast one, search through your deck for a grade 1, and be able to get a little bit of that aggressive pressure. And since you can call a grade 1 out of your deck, Idona is a grade 1 in your deck as well, especially if you haven't seen any copies of it so far, and you kind of want to clear your own board against control matchups. This is one of the ways to do it. Then for our grade 1s, we are running 4 copies of Drag Saver Esrus. You could opt to run 3 copies of Esrus depending on the ratio types you want to do. I'll explain that in a second. And then you could also still run 1 copy of Elementaria Sanctitude. That is entirely up to you guys. I'm going to leave that to you. We currently have it as this list. This is not my personal list, but this is a list of my friends, because I kind of wanted to make this advent calendar pretty special. I had some of my friends submit some of their lists, so a lot of the videos that you're going to see is on their list. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below, and I'll try to have my friends answer them as much as they possibly can. Okay? Cool. So you run 2 copies of D Esrus, and then also 2 copies of G Dragsaver Esrus. They're both the same name, so the G version of Esrus can actually send back for the ritual skill D versions of Esrus back into the deck. And one of the cool things of D Esrus is that you can move it to the Guardian Circle with some of your cool skills in your G guards. You can pay your Perfect Guard skills for it, which is good. Then moving on to the other grade 1s, we are running Preservation Angel, which is a ritual 3 in your drop zone, so you're just playing the game as you normally would, especially paying for your costs, you're soul blasting your grade 1s, you're guarding with your grade 1s, you probably had to PG early or just PGing and stuff. You're able to fulfill this requirement really easily in Premium. It becomes a 10k guard, so it basically becomes V shield numbers, which is good in Premium, and it also becomes a 13k attacker by itself, so you don't need to commit a whole lot of resources to the board. And especially into a lot of different archetypes, there's very few archetypes that get above 13k defensively outside of like Angel Giza and those similar archetypes, especially with the GB2 of Gavriel. It still punches for a number, which is really nice. Then we also have 3 copies of Knight of Heavenly Piercing Estalta. It has a very weird skill that hopefully it could cue you in on what this whole idea of this deck is looking to do. When this card is placed on rearguard circle or discarded from your hand during your turn, choose one of your back row rearguards and stand it. So hopefully that kind of cued it in what you want to do. The back row standing thing is pretty important because you can stand one of your really high powered boosters, and it replaces itself. So if you attack with something with 13k or even 20k or 15k or how much ever power that it is, you can call another Estalta out your deck with Cruciate or any of your strides that call during the battle phase. We have a couple, you'll see them in a moment. It allows you to be able to pressure on your stride turns or even pre-stride if you need to, but you usually want to save this combo for later on. You can opt to play 4 copies of this if you want to. That's entirely up to you. We're currently running 3 copies for now. Cool. Then, to round up some more of our grade 1s, we do have Black Sage Charon. We're running 3 copies of it, because as you noticed, we do run through a fair amount of counterblast in our deck. So we want to be able to countercharge during the battle phase or during your main phase whenever you can. In essence, because there's some moments your opponent can damage deny you, and you do want to play around cards like Honolly. This allows you to do just that. Then 3 copies of Skull Witch Nemain allows you to superior call the Damp Hood, which is cool, which gives you your Blast of Dark, and it also allows you to superior call Knight of Instant / Grete, which is also a cool little tech here that a friend of mine had thought of. You can play more ratios of this if you want to. This deck is a full custom. It's entirely up to you how you want to design it. When your rear guard is retired during the battle phase, this unit gets plus 5k until end of turn. So if you superior call over a occupied circle, it's retired via game mechanics, but it still counts as being retired. So if you call over it, plus 5k. Call over it again, plus 5k again. Cool, isn't it? It does have the added effect of being boosted by a Blaster Vanguard, being able to deal your opponent damage if they call the Sentinel, but it's very niche. I mean, there's like a couple of game states where this can happen, especially if you're playing with the Diablo Stride. Hopefully I'll put it up somewhere so you guys can see who I mean. This build doesn't utilize that combo, but you can opt to put it in if you want to. It's really cool. And obviously we are playing a V starter. Would you opt to play a G starter if you could? I don't think so. Sadly enough, the quick shield ticket, the extra draw, is very, very good in this archetype. You sometimes don't want to really have a full board against certain decks, and the draw just gets you there sometimes. Then we also run the yellow Overtrigger, the Spiritual King of Bright Sky. He does allow you to draw some extra cards, especially if you're running a low on hand. Out of itself, it doesn't draw that much in comparison to Luard, and it doesn't have that much in terms of control while clearing out your opponent's board. You could opt to run the blue Overtrigger or red Overtrigger instead, entirely up to you, and both valid options. Or you could run Keter OT. I think the Overtrigger is like a relatively flexible option. I am very much in favor of the blue OT because it adds a lot more pressure. You can get your S-Res back from your drop zone, especially if you sent one back in. Sometimes you have an extra one in drop and you're like, man, I wish I had one. It really helps a lot. It's pretty good. Then for the rest of the triggers, we are running Knight of Evil Spear, Gilnir. He is your Stridefather crit. Discard him. He's been reprinted, so if you want, you can get some extra copies of him from the history collection. Then we also have Astral Chain Dragon. Fantastic card, phenomenal card. You could opt to run maybe one copy of the Revenger G-Guard heal trigger, which does allow you to counter charge or soul charge, but you don't really utilize a whole lot of soul in this deck. Maybe Charon does, and maybe like one or two your G-Guards, but you don't use that much soul in this deck. You kind of reride a lot, so sometimes you'll just have more than enough. And especially while we're running Taboo Mage Kafar, which also gives you a little bit of soul, because when he attacks, he does go into soul himself to draw you a card, especially if you're on a Claret Sword Vanguard. And damage check, he does draw you a card as well. Then to the last of the triggers, which we have Cursed Eye Raven. Kind of used to be a bit of a Shadow Paladin staple. There's some decks that do not opt into it. Revengers doesn't really play this card. There's some Luard lists that actually don't play this anymore either. Some still do. I'm kind of obsessed with this card still. I think this card is a fantastic card into certain decks. I think it's way better than Luard. I mean, it's what it was designed for. You know what I mean? But it does allow you to call 2 cards from the top of your deck, which does feed into some of your other strides that might need a little bit of retire from you. Or it could feed into this being called as well. Then we head over to the G Zone. You can kind of see it from here. We do run one copy Harmonix Messiah. It's a staple. But it's really good as a entry point for beginning players, especially if you want to invest into a Shadow Paladin deck. You can get the premium collection stride deck sets for Revengers, and you would have most of these cards already. A couple of them you need to buy, but most of them are pretty inexpensive. The most expensive card out of almost everything is Harmonix Messiah and possibly Chain Rancor Dragon. Maybe a couple more things in here too as well, but we'll get to it. And then we have Dark Knight Kroshnark, which does allow you to retire, clear your opponent's board. It does give you a bit of restand. 2 copies of Dark Dragon Chain Rancor Dragon. It does give you a little bit of guard restrict. It does allow you to combo attack your opponent a little bit, especially with your stand triggers. Gives them guard with 3 cards from hand, especially on your GB2 turns, since your first stride tends to be into the Dark Knight Grim Revenger, which is a staple for our deck right now. You usually almost always first stride into him. If you don't first stride into him, I mean, you do have alternative options, but it hurts when you don't see Grim Revenger first, because he's going to actually give you the most important markers we're going to be running in this deck, which is Force 2 and not Force 1, because we're actually looking to utilize the effect of Chain Rancor and our multi-attack combo. So it's very important for us to see a little bit of extra pressure from our opponent for guarding. Then we're running 1 copy of Drag Principal Morfessa. You can change the ratio of this as much as you want to. You could run 2 copies if you want to. Having Ritual 10 to give 15k to front row plus a guard restrict is very deadly into most archetypes, but sadly enough the meta has shifted into a way where you'll have games where your opponent might damage deny you, might not be able to get off your skill off as much as possible, or you're playing into a control archetype that will never give you the drop zone to facilitate the skill. So it's a toss-up. If you're playing it, if you're playing on Shadow Paladin deck, I still recommend running any number of Morfessa as much as you can, any number at all. Then for our G guards, we are running Dark Dragon, Dark Veil Dragon, which does Soul Blast 1, count up to amount of your grade 1s in your drop zone, which does get 5k for every 5k for every 2, which tends to add up since we are running a total of 18 grade 1s in our deck, as you can in our deck, so you can see it'll be very strong. And then another option that you can G-Guard into is Dark Dragon, Deep Griever Dragon, which does give decent amount of shield power for how much grade 1s you send back, up to 5, and you can counterblast 1 when you send back 5 to pure frig to deny a damage for that turn from your opponent's attack, which is very scary into some matchups. Having a way of being able to perfect guard in your opponent's turn from your G zone is a very handy skill to have, and not a lot of archetypes have it. And then one of the two cool ways that we have in our G zone for us being able to PG during our opponent's turn when we have no PGs in hand, or we might have them on board, is using Witch Queen of Iniquity, Gelido. When it's placed on Guardian Circle, you flip up one of your G guards and you choose up to 2 grade 1s from your rear circle and you move them to Guardian Circle, grade 1 or less. And then if you move 2, you get to draw a card, which can be kind of cool, because then you can move Preservation Angel or move Esrus, and Preservation Angel gets plus 10k shield, and you could probably move them from the back row as well, and also intercept with Preservation Angel. You can have so much cool utility ways, and especially with how Darksaber Esrus is worded when it is put. And recently there's place and put, and those rules and interactions have changed. When you place cards, their on-play skills are activated. When they are put, those card effects or skills or whatever have you, when it says being put there, whether they're moved there, it's also being called as put. Play, sadly enough, is not put anymore, but put, yeah. It's cool, right? Gives us a way of being able to PG during our opponent's turn during their aggressive attacks. And then the crux of our deck, not in a bad sense, but the main way for us to get a whole lot of cool aggression, and where the combo is focused on, is the Supremacy True Dragon Claret Sword Helheim. So he is one of the cool skills, just like Dumdrid Valor from Kagero. He has a skill as well which allows you to force your opponent to opt into PG, or they have to use G guards, or they need to hard guard. So hard guarding is a way of being able to deny it, but if a Sentinel is placed on your opponent's Guardian Circle, so you could use Elementaria Sanctitude to get around this, but they need to deal with whatever triggers or drive checks that you've gotten. So it's still very potent to deal with. So when they PG or G guard during that whole turn, so it doesn't matter which attack, you flip up 1 and you Superior Call out of your deck grade 1s or less cards equal to the number of face-up cards in your G zone, which is so spooky. Your opponent has to deal with all that. You call them to separate rearguard circles and shuffle. Insane, isn't it? And it doesn't need to be open rearguard circles either, so you can call them over your rearguard slots, and it allows you to power up your Knight of Instant / Claret. Scary, isn't it? So we'll show you a couple of the tiny things that you can keep in mind as a bit of a demo here. All right, here we'll have like a tiny demo. Like most of it I kind of explained already, but this is basically what the scenario would look like, right? So you're on your second stride turn. You did your first stride thing. You can kind of half combo into it. You get like 4 attacks ish, since they're on like force markers. But on your second turn, you probably set up this. You call Grete. You got it out on the board. So you need Grete, any of the grade 1 combinations, maybe Cruciate. You don't need Cruciate for this combo in essence, but it's pretty helpful to have because then you can kind of combo into other pieces. So what you'll do here is we swing. For 13, your opponent guards and doesn't guard. If they don't have a way of interacting with its card, it's premium. They usually tend to have some way of like stopping you in some facet, but that's all right because it doesn't really stop too much because you still have Helheim to refill your board with actual units that you care about. So here we got 13, then 18, then Vanguard. They possibly could guard on any of these because you're going to be rewriting your Vanguard into Claret Sword Dragon during that turn. So your opponent's possibly going to try to PG, and especially if you've been aggressive enough, you'll be forcing cards out to your opponent's hand like really easily. They possibly G-guard any one of them, so you replace your board with three units because Helheim flips up one himself. So he flips up himself already, so you call 3. So then you'll possibly call you call Istalta here, anywhere really. Then you call maybe Esrus, but you would usually want to call Idona, but you could opt to call Esrus so that in case your opponent hits like over trigger or a couple defensive triggers, they stop your turn. You have Esrus plus a G guard to kind of move cards into your Guardian Circle to protect you. We're just gonna target Charon. Maybe our damage is face down, but I think we'll just do Nemain. We've already had a use of her, so she's just going to be an 18k booster. This stands itself. That's going to be a decent amount of power already. You retired 3, so then this gets plus 15 already. You possibly retired earlier, so it gets another 5. So it's going to be swinging for 20 to 33 already. It's either 28 or 33. It's kind of nice. You get your drive checkers. Crits, I mean, possibly power to the booster for sure. Power to the booster, and then last check, nothing, that's fine. Then we swing here again, we force our opponent to guard, they probably guard again, or what we can do is we swing at this, they could probably G-guard or PG here, then we swing with this. But then what you could also do too is then this gets retired. Then we call Preservation Angel, and maybe instead of giving the trigger to the rear guard, we can give it to the Nemain in the back row. We call another Astalta out of our deck, which then can stand this Nemain, and if this had gotten the boost, it still swings for 23 to 28 by itself through possibly 1 or 2 defensive triggers, especially some decks that are playing some 5k versions of them. So we keep on going, and especially if we had to retire another 2 to 3 rear guards, this gets another plus 10k to 15k bonus. So this just keeps on stacking. This just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's so funny. it's a hilarious deck. I think it's one of the funniest archetypes. And you're wondering, well, what if we happen to run out of Astalta, Preservations, all those cards? We just use our G guards and we just send them all back in. We just do it again and again and again. I mean, obviously until your Helheims run out, but hey, you know, that's the that's what you're paying for, right? So hopefully you do enjoy this video. As I said before, like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out. We're pretty close to 1,000. Hopefully we hit 1,000 by the end of next year. That'd be pretty nice. If not, that's also okay too. I hope you guys enjoy these videos. Be sure to support your communities, do the best you can, and have a nice day. Take care.